Stop trying so hard. If you have ADHD, then you already know the ugly truth. Every productivity system, every planner, every complex app eventually fails. And you're just left still feeling frustrated, like you're consistently starting over. But hey, it's not your fault. These systems are broken because they're too tedious, they're too confusing, and they demand the one thing that you don't have, which is consistent motivation. Hey, I'm Scott Treas. I'm a clinical therapist and an ADHD coach with LifeSketch. And here we help divergent folks build happy, healthy, wealthy lives. Today, I'm going to give you 3 executive functioning tools I use and teach that work without willpower. They're free, they're simple, and they're the antidote to that chronic start and stop cycle. Also, if you're ready to stop watching videos and start building real systems that work, check out some links to my ADHD coaching programs. Stick around because the last tool is the single best trick for beating procrastination and getting messy tasks started. Let's make sure we're on the same page first. So what exactly is executive functioning? Executive functioning is the set of mental skills that help the brain manage goal-directed behavior. It's often analogous as the conductor of an orchestra. This is primarily done with the prefrontal cortex, positioned right behind your forehead, which acts as that conductor, synthesizing information to form complex behavior. AKA, this is the part of the brain that helps us get things done, stay organized, and regulate our time, attention, and energy. It's the part of our brain that plans ahead, that says, I know you want to, but don't do that. It's the part of our brain that helps us multitask, switch topics, and creatively solve problems. But what happens when that system breaks down? Now let's talk about executive dysfunction. Conditions such as ADHD, or mood disorders, or even substance use can negatively impact some of that functioning. Here's a quick list of some of the executive dysfunction signs and symptoms. First, there's that difficulty setting goals or making plans. Maybe you have trouble motivating yourself to get things done, especially when you actually don't like doing it. You get easily distracted, from daydreaming to habitually losing your keys like me. There's impulse control issues such as interrupting or overeating, not being able to sit still. And then there's chronic procrastination. It's hard to get started, and it's even harder to follow through, especially consistently. So given these challenges, how can an external tool actually help us? Let's look at the benefits of executive functioning tools. Much of executive dysfunction is a neurodevelopmental difference, meaning that our brain functioning is built from our genetics and our environment and our experiences as we grow up. But we do have some influence, especially thanks to neuroplasticity. We can learn, we can adapt, and we can grow. And so what is an executive functioning tool? These are external aids like planners or apps for organization, time management, and productivity. These tools support or complement or even compensate for some of the lack of skills. Think hammer is a tool, building is a skill, and adhering boards is a task. And when it comes to executive functioning tools, it seems like everyone is selling a bill of goods. Promises is like the app or it works like magic. And I've read dozens of time management books, and they all claim to have the system. If you only follow their process, everything would be solved. And what's crazy is they aren't necessarily wrong, right? If we actually followed their system consistently or implemented that program habitually, and we actually use these tools, they work. But here lies the problem. It's easy to know what we should do. It's a whole hell of a lot harder to actually do it. So we're not buying this bill of goods. Then what do we need in a tool? We need tools that we can trust, that are reliable, useful, and accessible. We need systems that are sustainable, simple to understand, and easy to implement. And most importantly, we need to figure out what actually works for you. Not ideally or hypothetically or if only, but what actually is effective in real life. So let's look at the top tools that I recommend, which are simple, they're accessible, they're reliable, and they're adaptive. But I have to warn you before we get too far in. These tools aren't overly dependent on progressive technology or AI. You already have them quite literally in your pocket. And in the spirit of this approach, try them out and adjust to see what works. So let's start with tool number one, which is the easiest and most essential. Tool one is a sort of notebook. It can be physical, like my dot grid journal from Baron and Fig. I've used this for years now, and I love the consistency. And I actually have 10 years of refills that I'm stacking up. It can also be digital, like your Notes app or Google Keep. Really, whatever it is that works for you. The goal of the notebook is to create and use an externalized brain. David Allen, the author of Getting Things Done, he says that the brain is a great place to come up with ideas, but it's a terrible place to store them. So we're going to use our notebook for brain dumps or mind maps, right? Just basically getting your thoughts out of your head. You can use your notebook for to-do lists where you organize or manage tasks. You can also do more project planning where they're actually bigger in scope. You can process ideas, your fears, your dreams, everything. Again, what we want to do is we want to have a reliable trust system where we can put everything in there and externalize our brain. A notebook can be especially helpful for those inattentive types. It's good for managing anxiety and decreasing rumination, right? If we're overthinking about something, put it in our notebook so that we know that we can come access it later. And I used to use several notebooks for journaling or productivity or just needing paper. Now I put that all in one so that I'm used to having it and using it. I literally take it wherever I go. The exception is for my clinical and coaching practice. I use a separate process for the confidential information so that I'm not walking around with private data. A couple tips. I suggest that you make sure you enjoy it. From having the right paper to the right pen, it took me many years of iterating before I found this right setup. And last, I used voice memos or dictation as an urgent backup since I'm always going to have my phone. And so speaking of phones, let's move to tool two. Have you ever had someone tell you the time or date of an event and you just immediately lose it? And this is one of my more consistent points of conflict. If you tell me something, a date or a deadline, and it's not in my calendar, then 100% I'm not going to remember it, regardless of how important it actually is. Tool two is calendar apps. Think of a calendar as a budget for our three personal resources: our time, our attention, and our energy. A calendar reliably records this information, not in our heads. And a particular struggle for ADHD is time blindness, which is the difficulty of perceiving and managing time. And of course, the calendar allows us to actually see that time in a physical, more visual type way. So what goes in the calendar? I coach my clients to use time blocking and actually capturing events. So events, right? A rule for calendars is that any entry has to have a concrete time and a physical location. Do not turn your calendar into a to-do list or a wish list. For example, a 7:30 a.m. passport appointment at the DMV is on my calendar, not just a general apply for a passport. So deadlines, appointments with time and location. Another example that works is study for exam from 12 to 2 p.m. at the library, right? It has that time, it has that task, and that physical location. Another strategy for calendars is time mapping. I create blocks or chunks of time according to the particular life role that I'm operating in. I would have an event to pick up my daughter from preschool at 1 p.m. where I need to leave at 12:45. But I may have parent blocked from 12:30 to 2. Because during that time, I'm not a business owner, I'm not a life coach, I'm an active present father. Time blocking allows us to naturally be present without muddying or overloading our system. I can time block gym in my calendar without having all of my specific lifts or exercises that I'm going to be doing that time. I could put communication block where I chunk all my emails and calls into one time or 1 hour so that I can confidently not check my phone while I'm creating a particular piece of content. So some calendar tips. Make sure that you don't overstuff your calendar. We're not needing to fill every single hour, and really only if it's truly dedicated to something. And with that, only put something in your calendar if it's going to happen with almost certainty. To trust it, we have to do it. And if you're not going to do it, then just take it off of your calendar. And when I'm in my time block, I'm going to refer to my productivity management system, say using my notes or to-do list during that time. All right, so we've got the capture system and we've got the capacity budget. Now let's talk about the key to actually starting the work. Number 3 is a timer. Of course, timers and alarms are similar to calendars as they are managing time, but I'm going to show you a way to be productive without over planning. You see, sometimes we get overwhelmed by how much there is to do. Sometimes it takes more time to plan than just to do the thing. This is where timers and alarms are great. Instead of clean my room, which seems like a simple and admirable goal, we can get flooded by perfectionism and fatalism, right? It's just too much and I can't do it, so then I get overwhelmed and I'm not even going to start. Instead of reset the entire kitchen, I'll put a 45-minute timer on just to do what I can within that time frame. Instead of applying to 10 jobs, when we have no idea if you're going to find that many jobs that you qualify for nor are interested in, and it's also hard to know how long that will actually take, you can just put in a 20-minute job search timer. Here you can just blast through search engines, open up some tabs, and quickly filter through. You can actually come back and apply later, but without all of the doom scrolling. I know that when I was in grad school getting my master's degree in counseling, I could only write for about a maximum of 3 hours before I got mushy brain. That's all I could actually expect to be productive. So when I'm putting my timer on, I'm actually thinking about not just time, but also what's my energy capacity within that. Some timer tips. Timers are great for repetitive tasks. Timers are good for projects that never truly are finished or when you're just trying to make some progress. And setting alarms are a great external habit cue, such as starting a bedtime routine. So there you have it. 3 simple, accessible, and reliable external aids that compensate for executive dysfunction rather than demanding the impossible consistency. We covered a notebook as your externalized brain for capturing everything. The calendar is your capacity budget for time blindness. And a timer is your greatest tool for breaking down overwhelm and beating some of that procrastination. If you are ready to move beyond wishing you had motivation to actually building systems that work for your brain, you need a full framework. My 9 executive functioning skills life coaching program gives you a step-by-step roadmap, the accountability that you need to make these habits stick. You can find the link in the notes below. Check it out. And if you found these tools helpful, hit that subscribe button. What's your biggest challenge right now? Let me know in the comments below. Is it the planning or the starting or the follow through? I'm interested in hearing. So thank you all for your time, your attention, your energy. Stick around for the next video where we are learning more tips and tricks on how to manage ADHD. See you next time.